All right, a lot has happened over the last few days. Trump just made a Pearl Harbor joke to Japan's prime minister. There's a guy exposing what could be massive fraud happening in California. One of the biggest energy facilities in the world just got hit, and the UK is now dealing with what's being called a major outbreak. Yeah, a lot to get through. So if you enjoy these quick updates, subscribe and let's get into it. Okay, to start this off, we need to talk about a moment that was kind of unexpected. So Trump is in a meeting with Japan's prime minister. Everything's normal, they're talking strategy, military stuff, and then out of nowhere he goes,
Surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay, why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor?
That's one way to break the tension. Now, obviously that's a pretty bold joke to make, especially considering the history there. But the funny part is, people in the room actually laughed. You've got US officials, Japanese delegates, media, and instead of it getting super awkward, it kind of just lands as a joke. And to be fair, I probably would have laughed as well. And Trump basically keeps going with it. He starts explaining how surprise is important in military strategy, saying that recent operations were more successful because of that element of surprise. So in his mind, he's making a point, just with a very unique example. And honestly, this is kind of classic Trump. You never really know what he's going to say next. One minute it's serious policy talk, next minute, Pearl Harbor reference. But yeah, moments like this are why these meetings are always interesting to watch, because you can get something completely unexpected out of nowhere. So yeah, definitely not your typical diplomatic conversation. But moving on. Now this next story is actually kind of wild. There's a YouTuber named Nick Shirley, and he's been going around California investigating what he believes is large-scale fraud involving daycare centers and hospice care. And what he's showing, honestly, doesn't look great.
This is the sound of hospice money.
Great. So here's the situation. California has massively increased spending on programs like healthcare and childcare. We're talking billions of dollars. But according to these investigations, some of that money might not be going where it's supposed to. So he goes to multiple daycare locations, and on paper, they're claiming to have dozens of kids enrolled. But when he shows up, there's like no kids. At one location, the state records showed around 30 to 40 children enrolled, and there were only a handful there. At another, 0. And then it gets worse. Some of these places are in pretty rough conditions. We're talking questionable environments, no proper setup, even situations where kids appear to be unsupervised. Now again, this is what's being shown in the investigation. And obviously, not every place is like this. But if even some of it is true, that's a big problem. And then there's the hospice side of things, which is where it gets even crazier. In certain areas of LA, there's been a massive increase in hospice centers, like thousands of % increase. And when they go to check these places, a lot of them are empty. No staff, no patients, nothing. But somehow, they're billing millions. We're talking places receiving millions of dollars with barely any visible activity. And the big concern here is how this could be happening. One explanation being thrown around is that people's medical information is being used to bill the system, basically charging for services that may not actually be happening. And it raises a bigger question. How much of this is actually slipping through the cracks? Because if this is happening at scale, that's taxpayer money. So yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on. But moving on. Now, back to the global situation. Because one of the biggest energy facilities in the world has just been caught up in all of this, we're talking about Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city. And this place is huge. It's one of the main hubs for liquefied natural gas. Basically, it helps power a big part of the world. And recently, it was reportedly targeted during missile strikes linked to Iran. Now, early reports are saying there's been damage to parts of the facility. We don't fully know how severe yet, but even the fact that it was targeted is a big deal. Because this isn't just any location. This is critical global infrastructure. And whenever something like this gets hit, markets react. Fast. Energy prices start moving, countries get nervous. Because a disruption here doesn't just stay local, it affects everyone. And that's the bigger concern. We're now seeing energy infrastructure becoming part of the conflict, which is where things can escalate quickly. Because once energy supply is involved, the economic impact follows. and we've already seen prices jump after the news. So the question now is, does this stay contained or does it spread further? Because if more facilities get involved, this becomes a much bigger global issue. So yeah, definitely not a small development. But moving on. Now, this next one is a bit different, but also pretty concerning. The UK is currently dealing with what officials are calling an unprecedented outbreak. And what makes this more serious is who it's affecting: young people, students. So here's what's going on. There's been a meningitis outbreak in Canterbury, and it's been declared a national incident. Now, meningitis is a serious condition. It affects the brain and spinal cord, and it can be deadly. Symptoms include things like high fever, headaches, nausea, and in some cases, it can escalate very quickly. So far, there have been deaths reported, and multiple people hospitalized. And what's interesting here is how it spread. Authorities believe it may have started in a nightclub, which makes sense because it spreads through close contact. Things like sharing drinks, close interaction, that kind of environment. Now you might be wondering, is this another COVID-type situation? And the answer is, not really, because meningitis is bacterial. COVID was viral and airborne, which made it spread much faster. Health officials are saying the risk of nationwide spread is currently low, so that's the good news. But still, the speed of this outbreak is what's worrying people. Universities have taken action. Students are lining up for antibiotics, and health officials are monitoring it closely. So yeah, not something to panic about right now, but definitely something to keep an eye on. But that is where we're going to wrap it up. Let me know what you think about these stories in the comments, especially that California situation, because that one is kind of crazy. If you made it this far, you're one of the real ones. Thank you for watching. And if you liked the video, subscribe. And I'll catch you in the next one.